Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Reptilian People. I have Harry McAque again here with us. And we had so much interest in the last episode that we wanted to expand it further. We discussed last time the physical traits found in some Rh negative people. We discussed the possible origins of the Rh negative factor. So, in this episode, we'll be talking about more interesting things that I hope everybody will like.
Sounds amazing, man. Um, you know, I thought, one of the main things that would really be good tonight to discuss is the various mental and physical abilities of Rh negative people that are not common at all, but a lot of people do have them. And I'd like to explain how, you can find out for yourself if you have these abilities, by testing you.
Yeah, because last time we spoke about mainly the physical characteristics. So this time, if we can talk about some of the sheets, the powers, that would be really interesting. So please go ahead.
Okay, so a great place to start is with a recent internet craze where people are talking about the internal monologue. Okay, an internal monologue is when a person thinks in their head words that they think or words that they read, and it's become quite controversial because not everybody has it, and a lot of times when somebody finds out not everyone has an internal monologue or all the other people have an internal monologue, that it's almost unbelievable because the people that do have it think, how could that be? And the people that don't have it think, well, how could that be? So, I started doing a lot of research into where this comes from. And, I'm going to just brush the surface of it because we really need to dedicate a whole episode to some of the stuff that I'm talking about right now. But I started looking deep in the ancestry, of animals that have internal monologues. Okay. So what it appears to me is that the European or white race or, whatever you want to call it, are the people where this ability comes from. And they got it from Neanderthals. And the Neanderthals apparently got this from macaques because macaques actually think this way in their head as well. Okay. So this could be further back on the evolutionary tree, this ability, than just humans. And, so long story short, that's where it comes from. The greatest proof that we have of that is that the internal monologue is tied to literacy, an ability to be literate. And if you look at a map from the 1900s, it pretty much points out that the European nations and those mixed with it are the people that are, the literate people. So that's how we know that this is kind of like an Rh negative, Caucasian kind of trait, So one of the things that I found interesting is that there's also people that the internal monologue can activate midlife. So they can, be 30 years old before they ever start hearing their own voice. And a lot of times these people can, think that they're hearing the devil or whatever, and even carry out crazy crimes. So, it's even a worthwhile subject for psychologists to, look into. What do you think about the
That is
internal
so
monologue, Cobra?
interesting because, well, I have a couple of questions that I want to ask you about that, but that is so interesting because within the mysteries we talk about the holy guardian angel and the higher self and things like that. So that to me is related to the internal monologue, but also I would like to know maybe what evidence do we have that macaques do have internal monologue as well, because that it seems like such a high sentient capacity, and I wonder why it seems like such a large number of people do not have it.
Okay, well, I don't want to keep going into the monkeys because I feel like that's a whole can of worms we got to open up another time. But basically, the internal monologue is what the experts would call metacognition. It's where you're thinking about thinking. So they put these macaques to the test here lately, and they discovered a couple different things and a couple different tests that macaques actually do think about thinking. They have metacognition, like what the internal monologue is, and they were also found to have a visual imagination. Um, they were put through this test where they would come up with maps in their mind, so they knew where they were going, and they proved it that way. A quick Google search would take you to the studies so you could read it in detail. It would be metacognition macaques, or you could say visual imagination or manipulation of mental images macaques, and you'll get the studies. They're very interesting. And even recent studies have shown that mice have a visual imagination. So this visual imagination is often connected to the internal monologue. A lot of people that don't have the internal monologue also don't have the imagination. So the imagination is the ability to make mental images in your mind. You see them without seeing them. It's best described as I could play a movie in my mind, where there's voices, there's visuals, and I can have a fight with my girlfriend from 6 months ago in the shower and try to win it this time. So it can get incredibly detailed, and so we're knowing that the mice and the macaque are closer to the white race on the tree of life than the Africans or the Asians are, because we come from different hominids. Okay, so the Asians hominid comes from the orangutan, and the African's hominid comes from the bonobo, and those animals do not have the internal monologue. They do not have metacognition. Some of them don't even have what they call self-awareness. So, like, if you put a bonobo in front of a mirror, he's not going to recognize that reflection as himself. So, there's different levels of consciousness in the monkeys. Now, what you referred to earlier about the guardian angels and all that stuff is that I definitely believe that's part of Judaism, and also in another form where they talk about soul levels. Okay, so like a soul level one would be a rock. It has no life. Or maybe like a single celled organism, has life, but it doesn't have thoughts, and it doesn't have feelings, and it doesn't really have instincts. It just kind of does what it does. And then, you move up to animals, and, they've got instincts, and they think, and they can work out problems, and then you got most human beings who are a level 3. And that would be the people, maybe the people that, they've got consciousness, they've got feelings, they can do things, they can learn things, but maybe they don't have a internal monologue or a visual imagination, or sorry about that, that's my dog. Or perhaps level 4 would be that internal monologue and the visual imagination, and then they've got another 5th level called the Yachida level, where there's a divine connection between God and the person. Some people describe it as like a gold rope. And I liken this to Kundalini serpent power, how there's certain people that can control their EMF field, and they can draw that universal energy from the universe into themselves and even use it for purposes and manipulate it. So I think that would be what they are describing, the 5th level of the Yachida soul. What do you think about that, Cobra?
Yeah, so studying Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, and that it goes way back before Judaism, we talk about the highest level of the soul is kind of like a piece of God within you. And it's described that God is the only thing that exists, and we're all sort of expressions or sensory tendrils of God. So that to me suggests that at least within the created realm, there's like some kind of fabric interconnecting everything, whether it be like some call it the Inst of all, the limitless light, or maybe something like the dark matter, or some call it Vril, Prana, Chi, etc. So that seems to be related to the Kundalini energy, of course, that maybe some of us can draw in and move it around, manipulate it, and it's very interesting. I was in another space in which we were talking about the electromagnetic fields within the person and how to harness it and to heal it and things like that. And it was very interesting because there were a lot of knowledgeable people there, but after listening to them talk, I realized none of them have experienced it, because they were talking about sage and crystals and things like that, but not actually. They didn't really know what it felt like, so that showed me that, wow, that these people do not really know how to harness it.
Well, here, let me describe some scenarios that I have had, and I'll go into this Kundalini as far as my understanding to the best that I can. Okay, so basically, what I believe Kundalini to truly be, the real true Kundalini, is people that can voluntarily stimulate the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the long nerve that goes up your back. It's the main nerve of your spine. Okay, so the people that can stimulate the vagus nerve can do things like rush their adrenaline at will. This will dilate their pupils on command. They can increase their heart rate. They can increase their blood pressure. They can increase their temperature even. I can make a Fitbit go crazy, and when I'm doing this, I can feel this energy, going up my spine. Okay. And now when these Hindu sages, they talk about chakras, what I find this to be through my actual experience of doing it, not learning it through religion, but learning it naturally on my own, and is just an ability I was born with, is that each of one of these main chakras is just a node, like an electrical node that connects to one of your main organ systems. Okay, so you've got a main node in your waist organ, your butthole or whatever, the root chakra. Then you got one in your gonads. Then you got one in your stomach. Then you got one in your heart. Then you got one in your esophagus and your throat. Then you got one in your, in your brain. And then you have one on the top of your head, right around the area where your soft spot would be. Okay, so the people that are doing this, I believe, have a second connection in their heart in the same way a snake does, that allows them to voluntarily control their metabolism. A snake does this. It's probably the same exact thing, and it's a reptilian trait. So the way it
Yeah,
works
that's really
is,
interesting. So that's really, really interesting because within the mysteries, some of the techniques about circulating the Kundalini energy within you, we talk about making like a figure eight, so that sort of speaks of two valves in the heart, maybe.
yeah. Let me expound on this just a little bit further. Okay, so the way it works is when you stimulate your vagus nerve. Okay, when you can voluntarily stimulate that, it turns on what they call the galvanic skin response. Okay, so this galvanic skin response releases sweat and other conductive tissues into your skin, and brings the electricity into you. It literally makes you more conductive. So these people can turn on their conductivity to a higher degree. When you're doing it, okay, and you really get in, like if you're doing breathing exercises and stuff, you can literally feel the EMF field around you. And just like you said, it's kind of like a figure eight, but it's like there's two opposing energies. One goes to the right and one goes to the left, and they orbit around you in like a donut shape or like a torus field. Okay. And the closer the two energies get to meeting at your heart, the faster they speed up. Like when a planet comes closer to the sun, it goes faster. So it's like, it's kind of like that kind of energy. Now, there's people that have this ability and they don't realize it. So the way I could test you for this, if we was to test you, is I would tell you, number one, imagine. Okay, so we're at one higher level of consciousness. I'm telling you to imagine. So you imagine that you're on a roof. You close your eyes. You're on the roof of the tallest building, and quickly, as fast as a speeding bullet, you're falling down, and you land nose first. Now, if this imaginary situation creates a physical response in you, like you get a butterflies in your stomach or a feeling of anxiety, this is a sign that you do have a greater consciousness, a higher level of consciousness, and your body is reacting to an imaginary danger. Now, that anxiety feeling, if you can carry that and make it go up your spine, that's an even greater level, where once it goes up your spine and you can control that, and you can put it in your hands, your feet, or one of the main chakras. It doesn't matter. Any cell on your body, you can put the energy at. And now once you learn how to direct this energy, there's several tricks that, I've discovered that can benefit you. Have you heard of any, Cobra?
Yeah, actually. Well, one of the things that you mentioned is about this anxiety going up your spine. One thing that I've always been able to do, which is so weird, is just I can induce orgasms, full body, sort of by just almost thinking about it and start kind of like rocking my spine back and forth. And then I start feeling this thing going up. But I've been also doing the 5 rites, the Tibetan rites, and I've noticed certain changes in my energy throughout the day because of that. So that has to do with moving energy within you. So I don't know if you've heard about things like that, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, I've actually met females that can induce an orgasm in themselves without touching it because of this ability. One of the really cool ones that I found out is that I can make this ability to raise my adrenaline at any time, and as soon as the epinephrine, the adrenaline, hits my bloodstream, it makes my pupils dilate. I can just do it on command. They actually once thought this was impossible, and only like a couple years ago did they even admit this was a real thing. But let me assure you that you'll see very high levels of it in Rh negative people. I've met a few Rh positive people that can do it, but that would be the exception and not the rule. So
Yeah, it's really interesting because I was talking with the Grail Queen herself, Tuatia L. Douglas, not long ago, and I mentioned how I had learned how to dilate my pupils and make them slanted. And she was telling me, "Oh, that's so easy. You just control your heart rate, as if everybody does it." So I thought that was quite funny.
But one of the cool things about this pupil dilation, you might not know this, and this is true as it gets, is you can actually use that to control people against their will. Now, I say that to be sensational because it's actually a very minor thing. But here's how it works, okay? So if I dilate my pupils and I look in somebody's eyes while I do it, there's a phenomenon called pupil mimicry, where their eyes will actually mimic mine and dilate too. And when it does this, it releases endorphins associated with love and trust. So it's a way of influencing other people that we don't really even understand yet.
Well, so that reminds me of, and I think we briefly touched upon it last time. Reminds me of the legends of the vampires and how they were able to hypnotize, just by looking at somebody and kind of influencing them and seducing them.
Yeah. I even saw a cartoon, one of my kids' cartoons, that had a snake that was dilating its pupils. I forget which one it was, to hypnotize people. So, so that must be a thing. And, I'm associating the very high proportions of this DNA in the Celts. And, they've got, stories. The Celts and the Scythians both have, historical blood libels on them. That's probably true, where they was drinking blood. So that may also play a role in this. Is that the Celts and the Scythians are known for drinking blood. A lot of them can dilate their pupils on command. So I definitely agree about the vampire take.
Well, I think like the Viking thing of drinking certain things to produce ephedrine and go berserk also comes from some of these tribes who were blood drinkers, um, and they were drinking adrenalized blood, like when they were going into battle. And I know that within the rituals of the family, we do drink blood, not adrenalized blood, like some people say, oh, they're drinking the blood of children or stuff like that. But it's certain hormones that we look for.
Me myself, I've read a lot about that, and I wouldn't participate in it just because of diseases that you could catch, and It just is, not my cup of tea. But I mean, admittedly, our ancestors have been accused of this so many times that it must be true.
For sure. I mean, some of the mottos of some of the ancient families go something like, "The blood of my enemy is sweet, but the blood of my friend is even sweeter." So that tells us something.
Let me ask you this question. I think this would be an interesting question. So we both agree that Rh negative is a different species. So if you're drinking the blood of the other people, is that even cannibalism?
um, well, that to me would be like eating McDonald's. It's nothing. It contributes nothing to, because specifically we're looking for certain hormones. Specifically within the vampire ritual or the starfire ritual, we're looking for melatonin and a whole of other things that induce higher consciousness and longevity. But if you're not Rh negative, you're not able to produce those hormones at a certain level, and if you don't have the neurotransmitters correctly, aligned, it's like eating McDonald's. It's like eating nothing, like eating candy. It doesn't do any good to you.
I mean, I can't really speak on it because I just don't know nothing about it, but I don't think I would drink anybody's blood.
Well, I think it wouldn't do me any good, to drink the blood of somebody who is not who does not have the right stuff in them. If that makes sense. I think I would actually have
Who
more of
knows? I
an
mean, I don't
allergic
doubt you.
reaction.
It's just like, that's just a kind of a taboo for mine. I know the history of it, but I just don't think I could bring myself to do it.
Yeah, I think most likely an Rh negative person would have an allergic reaction to drinking the blood of an Rh positive.
So just to keep the show rolling, one of the next things I want to, bring up is that we're seeing the shadow of the dream world too, an awful lot of us. Okay, so the way you test yourself for this is if you close your eyes and you see colors and patterns, you're having what they call closed eye hallucinations. I kind of like the word closed eye visuals better. Now, um, these same patterns, for what you will, are the things that create the scenarios and the scenery and the dreams around you. It's actually independent of your visual imagination, or possibly they're working together, but it's two different things, really. So these closed eye visuals that you're seeing is kind of like seeing the shadow of the dream world while you're awake. And I've been digging into this because I haven't heard almost anybody talking about it. Because I'm always doing deep study on these things. And we used to have these people called seers around us. So it makes me think that even back then they would talk about the second sight. Some of the earliest Masonic texts talk about the second sight, and I think it could be correlated with this. So there's 5 levels to it. Okay, so on level 1, some people will see like static or like little stars, little dots when they close their eyes, and that's like a level 1. And then as you get up to like level 3, you're seeing the patterns and all the fractals and the way it works. And then on level 4, you're seeing or on level 5, you're actually able to control these patterns. So like controlling it is not easy. But I can control it, and I can make them, do whatever I imagine, which even though it's separate from my imagination. So what I've been wondering, okay, now this is pure speculation at this point. The closed eye visuals are real, but what I'm about to say now is speculation. Is that we see in reptiles and birds like a magneto detection system. Okay, and I really, really wonder if that's what it is. And the things that make me think that may be what it is all the other reptilian things that seem to line up, but also the fact that, the sun or a bright light can actually influence these patterns. They're not the patterns, but they can influence the colors of it and perhaps how you're seeing them. So these people quite possibly might be seeing electromagnetic fields and can also manipulate them. Now, there's been a lot of rumors, and I don't know what the truth is because I've only seen it once with my own two eyes. Is that RH negative people are sliders? Okay, so what a slider is somebody that can affect the electromagnetic fields of other things. Now, keep in mind that I do know it's a fact that we can affect the electromagnetic field by raising our vagus nerve and making it stimulate our heart rate and all these things. This all has changes on electromagnetic field. But this might be the case of people influencing other magnetic fields. So I cannot prove this, but this is what I believe it to be. Do you have any experience with
Yeah,
anything like
yeah.
that?
Actually, I know a handful of RH negative people who do have issues with electronics, especially batteries that go closer to your body, like watches and things like that, or even mobile phones. Or in my case, I know that I drain the batteries of microphones. So whenever I also sing, um, often we need to change them more regularly than normal, and it's a very strange thing. But I know people also that it's almost like, not that they make things short circuits, but it's almost like we eat up the charge of things, especially depending on our emotional state. That's what I've heard from people, that depending on their emotional state, they kind of like take up or take in the energy of electronics around them. So that's something that it will be really interesting to look into. Hopefully, research more into like what is the mechanism of that happens. Also, I know myself and others that we shock people. Like if they touch us, we give them a little zap.
I don't know if that happens to me any more than others, but I do shock people from time to time. The one experience that I do have it as my O negative son, he's my oldest son, was one day having a temper tantrum. He was about 3, and he was making the lights go in and out. Now, I tried to explain it. Maybe his scream, gave it the light bulb the slightest push to go, just a little bit out of circuit or something. But it definitely appeared that his emotional state was affecting the electricity for sure.
Yeah, and I've heard about that. There's like a little meme that goes around that be the reason why the lights flicker when you walk into the room, because it is something that some of us, it does happen. The flickering of lights has not happened to me directly, but the malfunctioning of electronics around me has happened quite a bit.
Yeah, so the next thing that would be really interesting to talk about is another extra sensory perception we have often what is called a vomeronasal organ. Now, the vomeronasal organ is seen on many animals. It's 80% of reptiles, about 15% or so of humans. Now, in other animals, the vomeronasal organ provides a certain, what should I say? It provides a certain ability to detect who is the same species as you and who is compatible for mating with you. It's a chemical sensory organ that can perceive pheromones from other animals. So, a lot of speculation has been made about the human vomeronasal organ. A lot of scientists that say, nah, it doesn't work. Oh, wait, I forgot one thing before I go any further, okay? Another way you can find this out if you have the vomeronasal organ is if you can curl your lip, okay? So if you can curl your lip like Elvis, a snarl, flare out one side of your mouth, that's called the Fleeman response. And it always accompanies the vomeronasal organ because that's what turns the vomeronasal organ on. So, like, for example, when a pretty girl comes around, one that I'm compatible with, it's almost an involuntary response for my lip to go up because I'm checking her to see if she has the right stuff for me. So I think it's pretty interesting that this vomeronasal organ is predominantly coming out of the Rh negative populations, considering that it is another species, and this is an organ that primarily detects who is the same species as you or not. So, it's an extrasensory perception.
That is really interesting. I think we touched up on it last time. How we see that in movies like Alien or Species, that is like they're looking for their mate, or they can feel when it's around, or another one of their species. So that is quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's an involuntary response to me a lot of times. Like, I don't just use it for, potential mates. I use it when I meet somebody. I've kind of got a crooked grin. And what I'm really doing is, involuntarily, subconsciously, detecting who is a threat and who is not a threat.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. It has happened to me, and I think when I'm around somebody who's Rh negative, I usually feel it. So
Yeah, man. I mean, when I first learned about all this stuff, I had knew about it since high school. I knew that I had an O negative girlfriend in high school, and I had a rare blood type. I really didn't, know much about it. But when I really, really became aware of it, I found out that most of my friends were Rh negative, or had one parent that did. Some of my friends were Rh positive too, but the Rh negative friends, were the majority. So, we have some kind of subconscious that, links us together because, we're just vibing with people. They're thinking like we're thinking, and we can see that, and, we vibe with those people because they're our kin. And I'm pretty sure that's just the way it goes, and the vomeronasal organ decides for us, not us.
well, blood for sure. It is something like a bit of a hive mind or a network, So definitely, I think that we are connected through a very, very, very distant ancestor. Some of us call it Tiamat, but definitely we have a connection.
Yeah, man, for sure. And the next on my list, it's not really as spectacular as the other ones, but I think this is significant nonetheless. We can actually detect movement with our eyes closed. Okay. So at the face of it, it doesn't sound that important. Some people close their eyes and they can't detect movement, but we can. I think this gives us an ability to withstand climbing. Um, could have been from the trees, it could have been from the mountains, whatever. But I think that Rh negative people, from what I've seen and the people I've polled, they have a greater propensity for heights than a lot of people. Specifically, if we start looking at Africans, that they have a very low depth perception, so they don't generally like heights as much. I know that some of them brave it, but it's almost like a thrill seeking behavior, and that's one of the genes that they say the Neanderthal has, is the novelty thrill seeking gene, and I think that all of those might be related to somehow climbing.
It is so funny because, yeah, I know that I feel or detect movement when I'm meditating, like if I'm outside and somebody walks. It doesn't matter if it's in front of me or behind me. I feel them around me. And also, it's interesting to me when I'm looking at somebody that is like far away. I don't know, like 20 feet from me, and they have their back to me, and it's like they feel that I'm looking at them. Not everybody is usually white people, uh, but it's like they feel it, and I also feel when somebody's looking at me.
Yeah, man, I've experienced that a lot of times. I haven't even really considered that, but so I wouldn't have any extra information on it. But yeah, man, I perceive that all the time, man. Like, you go in the store and you start looking at somebody, and before you know it, they turn around and you're embarrassed. Uh, so that might be a real thing. But as far as the detecting movement thing, I can sit there and kind of like, I don't really have to be meditating. I can just sit here and be relaxed, and I can almost make myself feel like I'm doing flips in the air if I wanted to, which I think is another little something to do with that most people really can't do that. The brain power doesn't allow them to do that. Okay, so the next one that I've really kind of been digging into recently is the phenomenon of pareidolia. Okay, so people are seeing faces in inanimate objects. Okay, so this is actually an ability that, once again, the macaques have, but the bonobos and the orangutans and the gorillas, they don't have. Okay, so like they put up a little card or a poster with a symbolic face, and the chimps will see, or the macaques will see it as a face. So some people do this, some people don't do this, and some people do it to some degree. Okay, but to me, it's almost like I can't stop doing it. So like you put me in a room with wood grain, I'm going to be seeing all kinds of faces in the wood grain. If I've got a moment where I'm just sitting down and I'm looking at the wall, start seeing faces in the wall. And what I believe this to be is part of like a threat detection system. It might be related to the occipital bun, which is a Neanderthal trait that we see also on the macaques, and we see on a lot of people with Rh negative blood. They have this occipital bun, and it might just be targeting threats, helping you aim and stuff like this, because we've got this predatory past. Where we're hunting animals, we're farming animals, we're making our bones and our meals off of animals. We've got green eyes because animals that are predators have green eyes. So this pareidolia is just another sense that we have for detecting threats in a violent atmosphere.
Yeah, that is very helpful. So that is quite interesting that we have that. I know that I do have it, not all the time because I try to control it. Otherwise, it gets a little crazy. It's like that. I don't know if you've seen that episode from the Twilight Zone, of that lady that saw faces on the wallpaper and drove her crazy. So I think if I start looking too much into something, I start seeing things or patterns.
Yeah, man. I wouldn't say it could drive me crazy, but it's something that almost like my eyes, if they almost lose focus, will like zoom in on this stuff. It's so weird, man. So another one that I would like to talk about is the is called synesthesia. Now, there's many kinds of synesthesia, but one that I do believe that I'm relating to Rh negative, with a high level of confidence. So it's called mirror touch synesthesia. And what it is that your body can merely follow other people's body movements. Like if you see somebody do it, you can do it. Now, it also happens to be that, like, for example, and I like to use this example because it's funny. If I see somebody getting kicked in the balls, I get a feeling of anxiety in my balls, and I want to grab my balls, and I become overcome with a sense of worry. So if I saw somebody, for example, when I watch UFC fights and a guy gets his leg kicked in half, it almost causes me real pain. It's more of a feeling of anxiety, but it's almost like I could feel that pain that they had. So this was an ability that I didn't even know was strange about me until I looked it up, and it's actually a more rare form of synesthesia. So I started asking around, and it's the same old story. All the weird stuff I got going on with me is also going on with other Rh negative people that I know and I'm involved in clubs with. And have you ever experienced anything like that?
Yeah, that to me sounds like empathy. So for me, in my case, I cannot watch like very very gory movies. I mean, I watch gory movies, but every time when somebody's like being tortured in the movie, if it's too realistic, it just gives me anxiety. It's like I almost feel it happening to me. So, and also I learned choreographies very fast. Like if I watch somebody do something, it's easy for me to repeat it, to repeat a movement or something like that.
Yeah. So apparently it's connected to mirror neurons. Okay. So the white people and the macaques, they have a higher level of mirror neurons. Okay. So when these mirror neurons can actually cause problems with the interbreeding and the interspecies hybridization, is that some of these kids can be born without mirror neurons, but they're programmed to have them. And this is one of the lead theories of autism, is that they have broken mirrors, these broken mirror neurons, and they're not learning how to behave like the rest of us. They're not empathizing with people. And I want to be clear that there's multiple kinds of empathy. So yes, I would say this is definitely is a form of empathy. But there's another form of empathy that I think that we might be lacking in a little bit. Is some people automatically feel sorry for the struggles of others. It's hard for me to identify with struggles of others. They'll come to me with their problems. I'll offer a solution. But if you don't want to listen to reason, then I really don't give a shit. And I think that form of empathy is another form of empathy that might be stronger in the blacks. They have this emotional intelligence where they can look at somebody and tell how they're emotionally feeling better than us. And I think I'm low in that level of emotional empathy. I listen to people and I care, and if they get hurt, I'm definitely going to try to save them. But as far as like me crying over their problems, I just can't do it.
The same. Like whenever a friend comes to me with a problem, I listen to them and I try to console them and everything. But I ask them, "Do you just want to vent, or do you want solutions?" Because for me, immediately, like if somebody tells me the problems, I start looking for solutions. Instead of like, "Oh, poor baby," But I want to ask you more about autism and Asperger's. What do you think is really the difference with that? And also, I wonder if you know about this gene that is called 16q24 3.4. That I've looked into it, and supposedly it is related to autism, but it's actually one of the oldest genes within humanity. So that suggests a very ancient origin, like 500,000 years or so, which is different than Cro-Magnon. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're talking about the same exact gene, but there's a gene found in predominantly white people, Neanderthals, and macaques. It's an autism gene, and they all have this gene. There might be several that's combining to create this situation, but yeah, what the thing is, and what really is behind it. Okay, I want to differentiate Asperger's and autism. So follow me. A lot of people get mad when you differentiate the two, and they start talking about an autism spectrum. Okay, but when we start looking at the classic definition of autism, the main thing that stands out to me is that autism is what they call a global precedence and perception. Okay, so these kids, they have no problem kind of like seeing the big picture of a lot of things. They tend to want to like stack blocks. Okay, they're kind of like they've got this builder mindset. They get stuck in certain traditions and the way they do things. Now, the people with Asperger's is really a totally different scenario, and I'm relating this to what I call the baboon DNA. And it's actually kind of like, in a lot of ways, the opposite of autism. And it's what they call a local precedence of perception. So, in this local precedence of perception, these are the people that can tell you uh, what the weather was on a Monday night in January of 1983. Or they can read off to you every stat from baseball's history from every single batter that ever batted, and they know this stuff, and they can bring it up. And these people seem awkward, and they don't relate to people, and they like to talk and drone on forever. And they, in this local precedence of perception, it allows them to focus in and remember these minor details of things. So if like they had like a job, where they're like bookkeeping or something, I mean, they would know the books. I mean, these people, this is what, this is their magic power. So there's a little bit of difference in it. So I would say that all of the Neanderthal DNA people have autism, but only a few are disabled by it. Okay, so this monkey brain, this macaque brain, this Neanderthal brain, this level of Neanderthal conscience, or whatever, however we describe it, is of a certain way, and they have these certain abilities. But these other humans, they also have, abilities too, and we might not perceive them unless we know about them. Okay, so this goes into other forms of synesthesia. Okay, so like there's other forms of synesthesia where people can see sound. Okay, music looks like a beautiful rainbow color pattern to them that they see visually. Okay, so in the book of in the Torah, I believe it's what Exodus. Okay, Moses is up there on Sinai, and he's getting the Ten Commandments, and they describe a form of synesthesia where they were, feeling, images and seeing words, and when God was talking to them. And this is kind of what people with certain kinds of synesthesia they do. Now, I recently discovered. Now, this is 1 out of 5 people that have this power. I do not have this power, okay, but allegedly, 1 out of 5 people have this spatial synesthesia, time spatial synesthesia, where when they're talking about dates or numbers, they can visually see in front of them like numbers, like it could be on a Rolodex or something, that they're actually not seeing it with their mind's eye, but seeing with their visual eye. And these people are seeing, you know, numbers, and they can do math problems, and they it's hard for me to describe because I don't have it, but it was described as like a spiral of dates, and it's got their own colors. And some of them got words where they see the words, and there's individual colors, and this for each letter and each word, and it's got certain sights and smells they associate with it. And it kind of reminded me of like the rabbis, where they've got a color designated for each letter of the alphabet. And it makes me wonder, if this is like the Jews, and other Semites, kind of like their superpower, where they can, they've got this amazing ability to, remember the details, and look at the fine intricacies of things. Like, a lot of them are gem cutters. I mean, imagine the patience and the obsessing over the minute details that has to go through somebody's head to be able to do that, or somebody to write the Bible, and this code that they have, where all these passages are interlocking, and they come back and to other source stories. If you look at it from a strictly scientific view, the Bible is an amazing work of details. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and at some level, I think that some of this synesthesia can be learned, because even though, thinking about it, I don't have those powers specifically, like seeing music or you know colors, like things like that. But I have done ear training, like musical ear training, and one of the things that I had to do for that is kind of like listen to one note at a time within an octave and associate it with a color or with a flavor. So I was able to do it, and I trained my ear, in order to sing in tune and things like that, or to recognize chord progressions, and like the notes within a chord. But that's something that I had to train to do, And now, if I listen to a note or a chord progression, I can associate it to colors. But that's like a learned ability. And the other thing, as far as within the mysteries, we are encouraged to, when we are thinking about the chakras, for example, we associate the chakras with certain colors, not just functions, but colors, flavors, or scents, smells. So that is kind of like a form of synesthesia, and like we are able to recall a certain energy, a certain state of mind, through association with a color or with a flavor or a certain smell,
Yeah, yeah, totally. I'm sure that these pathways in your brain can be learned, but most of these people would tell you that they're born with them. An experience I had, and I don't like talking about drugs a lot. I'm not that guy, but there was once upon a time I was a young idiot, and I tried some magic mushrooms, and it gave me synesthesia. Somebody showed me a piece of paper with some typewriter writing on it or whatever, and I was like, why are these letters rainbow? And I'm like asking other people to look at it, and he's like, these letters are rainbow, and they're like, no, 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 and nobody would agree with me. So I was like, I was thinking they was with me, and I thought it was a trick. And it turns out, me learning years later what synesthesia is that it actually caused that in me somehow. I'm sure there's a scientific explanation for it.
Well, it's neuroconnections, and it's like receptors, because everything, or reality, really, it is dictated by our perception, and our perception is dictated by our neuroconnections and the different hormones within our brain, so that's where the chakras come to mind, like, because it's also like the not only energetic centers but also glands, they produce certain hormones.
Yeah, another one, that would be interesting to talk about is tetrachromatism. Okay, so there's people that can see millions of extra colors. They can see a greater distinction in 100,000 different yellows than other people. I myself, I believe that I'm actually tetrachromatic in one eye. It's so weird because in one eye, the colors are just totally different and brighter than the other eye. And, so I started, looking into this a little bit further. And there's also different vision perceptions. Okay. So are you familiar with the dress controversy where people can't tell you the right color about the dress, whether it's golden, white, or blue and black?
Yeah, that was an interesting moment in time.
Okay. So this is the consensus that people are coming to, is that these people that do see this yellow and or the gold and white actually perceive nighttime light and colors differently. Okay, so I see white and gold, which is the minority. Most people see blue and black. So for whatever reason, in dim lights, my eyes will change how the colors is seen, and that's the reason why people see the difference between the two. Okay, so you start looking into what could be causing this. Okay, I believe, now I can't prove this. This is more speculation, that it's related to the yellow layer in people's eye, called lipochrome, the pheomelanin. It's what creates green eyes and hazel eyes and gold eyes. So this is the eyes of a nighttime ambush predator in nature. Usually, look at birds that eat other birds and other predators that hunt in the night. They often have these yellow, green, gold eyes. So if you start looking at how color is filtered through the eyes, the yellow layer, the green-eyed layer, will cause them to filter nighttime colors, the purples, the blues, and colors like that in a different way. So that, it might all come down to that. There might be more to it, but people with these bloodlines typically have greener, more green eyes than other people, and that might be what it is. That with the occipital bun, which is around the visual part of your brain, and things like that. But it seems to all be connected.
Yeah, in my case, it's weird because violet, certain shades of violet look like gray to me, like they almost disappear. So I think it might be related to that. And I have excellent night vision. Well, I have to wear sunglasses every time that I go out on the day because it is just too intense. But I prefer to be around darkness. I can see just fine. So I wonder if it's related to that as well.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely an interesting subject. I mean it's I hear these reports of they say that blue eyes, or even more sensitive to the light. And anybody that's got blue eyes, I believe, has, RH negative somewhere in their ancestry. I mean, it's, I believe that the blue eyes is a hybrid of the green and brown, but, this might be an even more enhanced nighttime hunting thing, for all we know.
Definitely, definitely. And also, it's I think with awareness of your surroundings. So it's definitely like an alert system.
Oh, speaking of alert systems, this is another one, and I find this way more common in RH negative groups when I poll people. Now, these aren't scientific studies, but these are people self-identifying as RH negative. We can't prove that they are, but I believe that it's also more likely in the RH negative for these people to sleep with their eyes open. And so, if you start looking at other animals and stuff that sleep with their eyes open, or one eye open, that it is an alarm system, and their brain never fully shuts off. It can shut off one side or the other, but it's almost like these people, when they're sleeping, they're still partially awake, and when they're awake, they're seeing the shadow of the dream world. So I think it's really interesting that we got this alarm system and this other seeing the sleep time energy of the dream during the day.
Well, that's kind of like being a shaman because it's like stepping into the other realities while being alive, and coming back. Going back and forth, and that's kind of like what a shaman is in ancient cultures, especially in Anatolia or like the Far East, Siberia, things like that. It is going into the dream world and coming back, and like living in between.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people tell me, when they get in this state, they get what they call sleep paralysis, and that, I've never done this, but I've anecdotally I've been told this a lot, is that some people, when they get into that sleep paralysis mode and they don't fight against it, because I always fight against it, that they can actually astral project. So I've never done this myself, so I don't want to say this is real. When it is, I'll definitely say it. But that I've heard this enough times that there might be something to it, and because like when I'm in the sleep paralysis mode, I feel like I'm kind of like it's drawing me into some kind of different energy. But I'm like, no, I've got to wake up. This is scary, and people are saying that they're astral projecting. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, it is very, very scary. Like I experienced it when I was little for the first time. I remember, and I couldn't move my body, and I felt like my body was sinking into the mattress as I was sleeping. But then I remember what I had read because I've always had an interest in the esotericism. When that happens, it's like the perfect time to astral project. So I follow certain techniques of imagining a rope in front of me that I can climb with, or just kind of like thinking of moving my body, moving out of my body, basically. And I've astral projected in that way, just within like my close proximity. Like I haven't really tried to do like remote vision, but moving around within my close proximity is like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Insidious, like when they go into the further, whatever it's called, but it's like a twilight kind of area. Everything looks like when the sun just sets, but it is not quite dark yet. It's like in between. So it is a very interesting thing. And I know I've talked to some other people who have had like similar experiences, and they describe it in a similar way. It's like being in a twilight area, with that kind of light.
Yeah, man. I mean, I through my experiences. Now, this is an unscientific thing, so it's all speculation. That I feel like I've even had prophetic dreams. Like once when I was about 17 years old, I had a dream of this other kid that had blood in his mouth and that he had done something horrible. And then, it wasn't even a few days later that this kid had killed my best friend. And, there's been many, situations like that where I've had like prophetic dreams. And it makes me think that the dream world is actually kind of a real place. I sense other entities there. Like it's not just me there. I've, encountered other entities, and I've done battle with them, and that this could be all in my head, but it seems like there's this whole other world that, we can't fully explore.
Yeah. So what Kabbalah talks about is that the realm above us, or the physical realities, Yesod, which is the dream world or the place of magic. And it's like when we insert a thought within that, it manifests. So that's why one of the best things is, like, as we are falling asleep but not completely asleep, we can say certain affirmations and we can program the subconscious mind to sort of change our reality. And also, as we are waking up, but we're not really awake yet, we can repeat that affirmation. So we are programming the subconscious mind, which is like really the collective unconscious. It's really the kind of like what binds everybody's mind, the hive mind. So I do think that the dream world, it is another realm. But also, what happens is that we can sort of step outside of time and space for a moment. So we can look beyond to what's ahead. And that is one of the real power of what I know to be the serpent bloodline, or arch negative, is foresight or prudence. It is the power to see beyond, to see ahead, to sort of like see the different possibilities and be able to make decisions based on that. And that's kind of like what the king was supposed to do in the past. The real kings, the real bloodlines, be able to make a decision for the good of all people based on foresight.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the Druids and the ancient Israelites, they both had seers. What were these people seeing? Could it be the things that we're talking about right now?
For sure, I think, like, and also the Vikings and throughout the Celtic world, and they had a gift. Maybe that's the second side, is the foresight. And the way that I've actually experienced it while awake is that when I've been under a great deal of emotional stress, I've had moments in which, like, I have an expansion of consciousness, in which it seems like I have a 360 view of everything. And I notice even the smallest details of people around me. And I have this perfect calmness, which I describe it as kind of like a swan floating on calm waters, or something similar like that. And it's the knowing which steps to take in order to make something work. Like, it's like, okay, I see the situation detached from where I am, is detached from my current emotion, and I'm able to see which steps to take in order to maneuver around it, and somehow make it work.
Yeah, totally, man. Speaking of things that's common to the Celts and to the ancient Israelites, is the belief in the evil eye. Okay, so are you familiar with the evil eye?
Yeah, I've actually studied it. It's a very, very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, the idea is that there are people that can hurt you, animals, or other people with a certain type of gaze. Now, I have to be honest when I say this, that I've almost wondered if I do this in the past. Now, this is, we're out here in the mumbo jumbo, but I believe that there might be something to it, and I kind of sort of wonder if it's not the people that have that voluntary pupil dilation that we talked about earlier. So you look at the Hamza, which is like the symbol for defeating the evil eye. Okay, and what it has is an eye picture where the pupil's dilated really big. Okay, so what I wonder is if that ancient amulet could actually be used in a way through pupil mimicry to throw off people that can do this with their eye.
Yeah. Actually, I think so, and it's kind of like the same thing with the Gorgon in ancient Greece. It is kind of like looking back at whoever is sending you the evil eye and returning it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's all speculation, but a lot of times, when we're looking at these ancient histories, where there's smoke, there's fire. So, I've had many people, come to me privately and wonder the same thing. So, there might be something to it. It might be just fluff, but there really might be something to it.
I think there's definitely something to it, and we can affect the energy of people around us. And that's why I think it's not good to tell people when you're down, but and also to not tell them too much if you're doing well, because we never really know the intentions of others. So it's best to be very discreet.
That's always good advice. I think that about wraps it up for, the things that I was trying to discuss tonight. I may have glossed over something, but we really covered the main things. Is that these Rh negative people, they're coming from a different hominid species. We agree about that, right?
Absolutely, and from what I know, it's an aquatic being. It's not a tree dwelling ape necessarily, but it's an aquatic sort of ancestor.
Yeah. That's why it's so important to make the distinction that that monkeys swim and apes don't. So if we look at it as a different species, okay, this species definitely does have distinct body parts, distinct organs, a distinct look, different ways about them. But we, even when we can come to identify this stuff in our own selves, we have to consider that other people have abilities too, and that we might not know about them. And there might be, a lot of human potential that we're just not seeing. For example, there's these, they call them the sea gypsies. It's a tribe over there, I believe, somewhere around Burma. And these people, they can dilate their pupils in a certain way where they can see perfectly underwater. So there's people, that from their ancestry and being adapted to their surroundings, have, superhuman abilities, and it's real. And we shouldn't always believe anything ever somebody says, but for the stuff that we have evidence for, man, it's definitely worth taking a look into.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your wealth of knowledge and sharing with our audience. So, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I hope that we can talk some more in the future.
Yeah, man, you too, man. And I'd love to do a breakdown sometime soon of my anthropology research.
Absolutely. We still have pending talking about the different blood types. So, we can do that sometime soon.
Okay, buddy, I'll talk to you soon.